Okay, if you are protesting now or if you plan to protest someday, you should really know your rights. What is the law and what is beyond the law so that you can be prepared to advocate for yourself and others if you see protesters' rights being violated and so that you can remain safe. Now, I know I don't even have to say this, but of course, if you break the law, including by damaging property or attacking people, you are at risk of getting arrested and of getting the crap kicked out of you, by the way things seem to be going with police. And nothing in this video is meant to help people break the law. The point is to understand the law and understand what you're legally allowed to do. So, first of all, the core of this is that the First Amendment of the to the Constitution of the United States grants you the right to assemble and to use your voice to protest. Using your voice includes things like holding signs as well. It is legal for law enforcement to ban protesters from certain physical spaces. For example, if law enforcement says you can't walk on the highway to protest, and there's already, most states have rules against walking on the highway anyway, and you do it, you can get arrested for that. If there is a curfew and you ignore it to protest, you can get arrested. Where things get tricky is in the gray area. When you have 99% of a protest being peaceful and 1% starts breaking the law, the police do have the right to clear the entire protest, and you can get arrested even if you weren't doing anything wrong. If after police have said it's time to go, you stick around. Now, police are not supposed to immediately start arresting and tear gassing and hitting people with batons. If they say protest has to end, they wait 5 seconds and they start beating the crap out of people. They're supposed to provide a reasonable amount of time for people to get out of the area. And if you are clearly walking away, you also should not be bothered or attacked by police. Now, this is, as you can imagine, dangerous because these rules can be misused. Police can incite a couple of people to break the law to then justify clearing an entire protest. That's a way in which police can misuse these rules. But understand that when part of a protest has gone bad, legally, I'm not saying morally, legally, police can clear the entire area. Now, in terms of where you can protest, I mentioned highways could be off limits. That would not be considered a limitation of your First Amendment rights if police say you can't walk on the highway and do your protest there. There are states that require permits if you're going to be in the street or sometimes on the sidewalk if you're not going to be moving and you're going to be blocking traffic. Now, pedestrian traffic. Generally, you do not need permits to protest while walking along sidewalks or even in streets sometimes if you are not obstructing traffic. Depends on the state. It's very hard to protest on a road without obstructing traffic. So the road protests almost always do need a permit. Generally speaking, public spaces can be protest locations. That includes sidewalks and parks and the like. Doesn't mean you can do it without a permit in some states. You must know the laws of your state. Anytime that you block the passage of people or cars, and this includes on sidewalks, you can be arrested if you refuse to move. Understand that. And again, this can be misused by police. Police will sometimes say you're blocking pedestrian traffic and then say, and because of that, it's time to wrap it up. And then you stay and you get arrested, even though traffic may not actually have been blocked. Police are supposed to provide a reasonable opportunity to comply, and that includes sufficient time and a clear, unobstructed exit path. We had reports from yesterday that protesters were sort of corralled onto one of the bridges in between Manhattan and Brooklyn, I believe the Manhattan Bridge, and that would be in violation of, if you say it's time to go, you have to provide an unobstructed exit path and time to exit. Now, this means that they can't say the party's over and within 15 seconds start arresting people, but it is sometimes misused by police to claim we issued a dispersal order and they didn't move. Quick note about government buildings. Government buildings can be exceptions. They're sort of public buildings in a sense. That doesn't mean you can necessarily protest inside, and that varies by state. Very important. If you want to show up and record with your phone or with a camera or whatever, you can record what is going on in public, and you can record police no matter what they tell you. Again, the trick to watch out for is that if by recording you are impeding police where you've decided to stand, if you're getting in the way of what police are doing, they can argue you are interfering with police, you're obstructing law enforcement. As you can imagine, that can also be misused. And you can find examples of police saying that somebody who's really not obstructing is obstructing by virtue of where they're standing to record. The advice we generally see is stand on the sidewalk to record. If the altercation is happening on the sidewalk, make sure that you're not in the way of police. Now, in terms of recording, you are also protesting in a public space, meaning you can be recorded, your picture can be taken, your face could be published in media without your consent. Understand that when you go to a protest, you're not starting an altercation because someone's filming you, but they do film you and then that is used somewhere. That is legal because you are out in public at a protest. Police do have pretty broad rights to maintain law and order and uphold local laws. And this can sometimes be misapplied to filming. Be aware, police can't tell you that you have to turn over your phone. They can't force you to show them stuff on your phone. They need a warrant signed by a judge in order to do that. Now, if police approach you because you are recording, certainly remind the police that recording in a public space is, number one, of course, legal, and number two, does not count as reasonable suspicion to believe you have committed a crime. In other words, if police say they're approaching you because you're acting suspiciously and all you're doing is filming does not count as reasonable suspicion. If you do break the law and get arrested, the normal search and seizure rules would apply. If police tell you you've got to delete a video from your phone, that is not a lawful order from police and you don't have to do it. If police want to search your backpack or your wallet or your fanny pack before or after an arrest, you're under no obligation to allow it. And you can even say, I do not consent to a search of my property. Police typically are allowed to pat you down. In some states, you do have to give police your name, but you are not required to give any other information. Remember, counter protesters that might not agree with you also have free speech rights, and police are supposed to treat both protesters and counter protesters equally. According to the ACLU, police are permitted, if they identify antagonistic groups, police are permitted to keep those groups separated, but they should allow them to be within sight and sound of each other. Otherwise, you're not really able to protest. You're not really able to counter protest if you can only do it out of earshot and visible range of the people you are protesting. So then a few notes on police interactions. If police approach you and want to talk to you, you don't have to talk to them. Don't resist, of course. It's better not to run away, but simply ask, am I being detained or am I free to go? If they say you are not free to go, you are able to inquire, what is the crime I'm suspected of having committed that has caused you to detain me? If you do get arrested, you also don't have to say anything. Again, in some states, you do have to state your name, but in many states, you don't. The degree of cooperation you want to exhibit is up to you. Depends on what you've been doing, depends on your priorities. At any time, you can ask for a lawyer, and they are required to provide you one. Now, can you be fired by your employer for being at a protest, even if you didn't do anything illegal, even if your participation is protected by the Constitution? Unfortunately, the answer is it depends. It depends on the state you live and work in. It depends on what kind of job you have. It depends on what kind of agreement you have in place with your employer, if you have one. A lot of people don't really have such agreements. And that one is more complicated, and you should really discuss it with a lawyer or legal aid service. But there are many circumstances in which your employer can dismiss you merely for having participated in a constitutionally protected protest. Very important to understand the law and your rights when it comes to that. Let me know if I missed anything important. Make sure you are following me on Twitter at @DPakman, and make sure you're subscribed to the Daily Audio Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and Google Play, or anywhere you prefer to get your podcasts. We'll take a quick break and be back after this.